Good morning, you Tubadors and you Tubians. Morning coffee. Hopefully you don't get it by 5 o'clock. Things are looking good though. It's uploading fast now, not last night. I don't know. We're back to normal, I hope. I'm not going to hold my breath. I'm trying to get that cabinet finished today. We'll get that uploaded later. I got the new knobs to put on there, or the new door pulls to put on there. I'm going to take that bottom one, flip it around, get it right, get all the other hardware mounted on it, and the only thing that'll be left to do is magnets, which I have here. But finding them, they're sitting in bins and coffee cans, and I know I have enough, but they're shutting good enough now. I shouldn't need that for a while. I mean, it's not no big thing. So we'll get them cabinets out there. It's pretty windy this morning. Well, there's some rain in the forecast, but that don't stop me. I only stop when it rains. And usually if I plug in the power tools, that's when it's going to rain. So maybe I'll create some rain. It's in the weather forecast for like 4 days. It was supposed to rain yesterday. You couldn't even tell it rained when we got very little. I got stuff all over my shirt. Hope y'all don't see that. Yeah, pretty boring day yesterday. Just weed eated, other than the stray dogs showing up. I'll explain a little about that. How about this time of year, a lot of you people, I never knew until I moved here, but they hunt deer with dogs. They got a pack of dogs. They'll get 10 of them together, I guess. I'm not exactly sure how they do it. And they sit out there and they try to flush all these deer out, and whole groups of them. I don't exactly agree with it. That's my opinion, but that's their culture. That's how they were raised. And it's one of the few states left that it's legal in. So once in a while you'll get one of them dogs that run up on your property. This one, I don't think so, was one of them. He was older. I felt bad for him. He seen me out there and wagging his tail. But man, whenever they come on this land, my dogs get to fighting and it's chaos. And once you feed them or pet them, you never get rid of them. And clearly it was somebody's dog. Had a collar on. Usually there's a nameplate on there. I didn't even want to get close enough to look for that. So I just had to fire a few shots up in the air, and he ran off. I hated to do it. I'd like to have 500 dogs up here. I'd be feeding them all. But I found out real fast when I got into dog rescue here, you can't save all of them. Man, you wish you could, but you can't. Because there's just too many. It's unbelievable how many puppies here, They'll sit up at the grocery store and give away puppies. People will take the puppies home. Guess what? They find out it poops and pees and needs to eat. Then he ends up at the shelter. I couldn't tell you how many puppies ended up at the shelter because they give them away at the free Saturday trade days, once a month flea market they have. And the kid would grab the puppy, the parents didn't want it. And I had a policy. I would most all the dogs we had went up north. We did not adopt to local, very, very rare cases did we adopt to local people for that reason. Now there were some we would adopt to. I had a friend that got grumpy, he's doing fine. But for the most part, and especially if they're younger people and they're renters, I would never let nobody that was renting a house adopt a puppy, because you know what happens there. And here, I don't know how many times they'd move out or they'd get evicted and then just leave the dogs, and the city would have to go pick them up. Real sad. And one time there was a dozen of them dumped off at the car wash. I understand young people love animals and that, but I don't believe you should get a dog until you need to really think it through. If you're renting, that isn't the time to get a dog. You need to own your property, because in a rental situation, you don't know what could happen. The guy could decide to sell the house, and then you're stuck trying to find another place. And most of them don't want animals, or you got to have a large pet deposit. So it's hard. And I didn't have any. I tried one time when I was in my early 20s. Had a place out in the country, but it was one of them situations, and so I gave it up to the Humane Society. That's the only time I've ever, and from that point on, anytime I got one, I did have to leave 2 dogs when I lived in Kentucky. I had them several years, but I knew the person very well, and them dogs lived out their life with her. But that was the only other time, and I vowed that if I got any more, they'd have a whole lifetime with me, and they have to this point. I don't foresee anybody. I own this place free and clear, so nobody's going to come take it away from me. I hope not. They're gonna have a fight on their hands if they try. I'll burn it down before that happens, and then, believe me, I'm serious about that. I sure would. I'm not gonna put all this work into a house, but I'm not in any kind of situation like that. But yeah, and then there's the other side of the coin. You know, at the age I'm getting, I'm not gonna take on any more puppies. It's hard enough what I got to do with the older ones, but I can handle it right now. They're at the age they're not running around crazy like puppies would, but I wouldn't want to get a puppy and live only 5 more years or something like that. And then that puppy's that dog's going to be back into the system, and it's just not it's terrible to watch them come into that situation. They're always scared. So that's what I did there, and because I've seen it so many times where young people would get, and there's a lot of responsible young people. I'm not saying there isn't, but most of the cases where they would be surrenders would be young people that rented houses, or young people that rented houses and didn't, in the lease, they were not supposed to have animals, and then when the landlord found out, guess where that dog had to go? So there was no need to let them even adopt one, because we had no problem taking them up north. Once a month, we'd load them all up, take them up north. They'd already had adoption, homes ready to go, and we'd get a lot of reports back, and all them dogs did well. And they have strong spay and neuter laws up there. That is why all the shelters in the South send them up north, because they have laws where you have to spay and neuter your pet. That reduces the population drastically. They can't find enough dogs. So, but it's a hassle, and it costs a lot of money to get them up there. But if we had these laws in every state, we wouldn't have this problem. But you got to get people on board with that, and some places it ain't happening. So enough on that, but I figured I'd chime in on that for somebody said, "Why didn't you feed that dog? Why didn't you take it?" It's an endless cycle here. They got at least a dozen across the street. One's pregnant now, just had a litter. Them dogs aren't even 6 months old, and it's pregnant again. Just goes unchecked. They eventually get hit by cars. That's why my dogs are on, when I take Libby out of her yard, she goes on a cable. They know the cables, they don't get caught up. Had a big scare yesterday. Went out there, and I was looking at Rooster's cable, and I'm like, that's pretty weird. It looks like it might be broke. So I called for Rooster. Here she comes walking around from the other side of my truck, and it was broke right in the middle. Only she didn't realize it. And I had another, I always got an extra one ready to go. But I always check hers every day, because she will run. When she gets loose, she will run, and she will run far. And she's not the kind of dog that would survive out here long. And she's not road smart. That put a scare in me. So I've got a new cable hooked up, but I always check it. It's just a little spot that was rusted, and it just broke. They tug and pull on them things all day long, because dogs are walking up and down the road. Got a guy riding a mule up and down the road every day. So they get excited, and Libby chews on hers. Her cable is very thick. It's not heavy. It's just very thick. It's very expensive. I just put her a brand new one out. I replace them before they even break if I see that they're rusted, because once they start rusting, they don't last long. And it's not cruel to have them on that. They are supervised by me all day long. I check on them every 15 minutes at least. And they're in places where I can constantly see what's going on. And they'll tell me if something's coming on the property. And then I go deal with that. Most times you get once in a while you get a new stray dog. All the dogs around here know they don't come up here. But if you get a stray one once in a while, I'll just pop a few shots up in the air, and that usually takes care of it. So if one puppy I had come up here, he just wag his tail. He'd fire one up in the air, he'd just wag his tail. So I said, all right, and it was late at night. I put him in. Libby wasn't in her kennel that night. She was out here. So I put him in the kennel, and he was out of there within 10 minutes and ran off, and he ain't never been back. So he didn't like the idea of being locked up. So that worked for him. I haven't seen him. He went over, was living across the street, and I haven't seen him, so I imagine he got hit by a car or something. They don't survive more than 1 or 2 years. Very rarely when you let them run loose like this. This is a 55-mile-an-hour highway. So I don't want my dogs running around there. And I wish they all got along. They'd all be in the house with me. It is very small in here, so that would get pretty crowded, but they don't get along. Rooster can't stand Libby. Lily can't stand Libby. Rooster can't stand any of them in the house. So that's, I live and learn, and I deal with it however I got to deal with it. And, when I had Wally, him and Waldo, they got along for years, and then all of a sudden Wally got tired of Waldo being a bully. Wally was a lot bigger than Waldo, and I knew that day was coming, and he challenged him, and it got ugly. So I had to build Wally a separate yard. When Lulu was alive and Lucy was alive, they got into a fight. The female dogs will also try to establish the alpha status, and Lucy was the alpha, and Lulu didn't want to hear that, and she got tore up pretty bad, had to have surgery, so I built her a nice, great big yard back there. She enjoyed being by herself. She did not like being in here with the other dogs. She was always a loner type. So, all right, enough of the dogs. Let's not make this too long, but that's a little bit of a story about that, and I thank God that I seen that cable yesterday on Rooster because it wasn't long after that mule guy on a mule. I think what he's doing, he's trying to get that mule used to traffic and barking dogs, because he's walking right through where all these stray dogs. If they're running loose, I'm calling your dog a stray dog, because it's running astray. So and some people take offense to that, but hey, you don't let your dog go anywhere it wants, it's a stray. And half of them ain't got names anyway. So, all right, guys, happy trails.